The morning Pine Ridge decided Rebecca tours had officially failed. She stood in the narrow garage bay behind the hardware store staring at a rent notice taped crookedly to the wall. Oil stained the concrete beneath her boots, the smell of grease clinging to her clothes the way judgment clung to her name. At 34, Rebecca already carried a reputation she never asked for: single mother, grease monkey mechanic, the woman people lowered their voices about. Her hands were scarred from years of busted knuckles and stubborn engines, proof of work that never seemed to lead anywhere. Across the bay, her 9-year-old daughter Sophia sat on an overturned paint bucket, finishing homework with quiet determination, far too used to adult worries. "Mama," Sophia said carefully, "Mrs. Henderson said you fixed her car wrong." Rebecca exhaled slowly, counting to 5, swallowing anger she couldn't afford. Pine Ridge was the kind of town that forgave men for mistakes and punished women for surviving them. Everyone knew her story, or at least the version they preferred: pregnant too young, abandoned too easily, stuck forever. She was the cautionary tale whispered to daughters. By afternoon, after mailing another late payment, Rebecca paused at the community bulletin board. Between yoga classes and lost cats, one faded flyer caught her eye. County auction, historic stone cabin, minimum bid $3,000. Locals called it Marilyn's cursed cabin. Rebecca folded the paper and slid it into her jacket, unaware she had just stepped into the only chapter that would ever truly belong to her. That night, long after Sophia fell asleep in their drafty rental house, Rebecca sat alone at the kitchen table with her laptop and a cup of bitter coffee. She searched the cabin's history until the screen blurred. Rumors contradicted facts, facts dissolved into legend. Some swore Marilyn Monroe once hid there to escape Hollywood. Others said every owner lost money, sanity, or both. Grainy photos showed stone walls, tall pines, a leaning barn swallowed by weeds. Rebecca didn't see decay, she saw space, quiet possibility. Her savings account read $3,416. Every dollar represented skipped meals, patched jeans, nights pretending she wasn't scared. The auction was held in the community center, fluorescent lights buzzing like insects. Developers smirked when she walked in. A real estate agent laughed openly. When Rebecca raised her hand, the room went silent, then amused. $4,000 was everything she had. The gavel came down sharp and final. Laughter followed her out. By evening, the town's social media page lit up. Rebecca Torres bought the cursed cabin. Rip her savings. She sat in her truck behind the garage, forehead pressed to the steering wheel, wondering if she had finally proven them right. Yet beneath the panic, something unfamiliar stirred, an uninvited sense of defiance. For the first time in years, the future felt unwritten, and that terrified her almost as much as it thrilled her. The road to the cabin wound upward through pine and silence, gravel crunching beneath Rebecca's tires. Sophia pressed her face to the window, whispering questions about ghosts and movie stars. The cabin appeared suddenly, smaller than Rebecca imagined, but stubbornly solid, stone walls weathered yet unbroken. Inside, dust muted every sound. Sunlight slipped through boarded windows, striping the wooden floor like a memory frozen in time. The air smelled old, but not rotten, preserved. On the fireplace mantel sat framed photographs. Rebecca wiped one clean and felt her breath stop. Marilyn Monroe stood there, unmistakable, smiling on that very porch decades earlier. There were more laughing inside the room, reading in the sunlight, relaxed and unguarded. Closets held dresses wrapped with care. Drawers hid letters written in looping, intimate handwriting. This wasn't rumor. This was real. Rebecca sank onto the couch, heart racing. Over the next days, she worked obsessively, cleaning, cataloging, dreaming. She imagined a workshop in the barn, a modest museum, a life where no landlord could evict her. Then one quiet afternoon, scrubbing the massive stone fireplace, her fingers found something wrong. A seam where none should exist. She pressed. Stone shifted with a muted click. Cool air rushed out from behind the wall. Rebecca stepped back, pulse roaring, staring into darkness that had been waiting far longer than she had been alive. The hidden panel opened into a narrow tunnel carved directly into the mountain. Rebecca hesitated only once before stepping inside, flashlight trembling in her hand. The walls were solid, intentional, fitted with old electrical lines that hummed softly when she brushed a switch. The passage opened into an underground chamber, and her light slipped from her fingers, clattering across stone. Shelves, glass cases, mannequins dressed in shimmering fabric. Rebecca's breath caught as recognition struck her all at once. Dresses she had seen only in photographs. jewelry arranged with museum precision, film reels stacked neatly, journals, dozens of them lined up by year. This wasn't storage, it was a vault. One placard read Subway dress, 1955, original. Another listed a gold gown worn on set. At a desk lay an inventory ledger. Rebecca's eyes skimmed the numbers until they stopped making sense. $250 million. $300 million. She sat hard on the stone floor, laughter breaking loose in disbelief. The town that mocked her had no idea. Above her, Pine Ridge slept peacefully, unaware that its favorite failure now stood inside one of the greatest cultural discoveries of the century, hidden beneath a fireplace no one else had ever bothered to question. Rebecca didn't call anyone that night. She sealed the panel and sat on the porch, watching the valley lights blink below like a smaller world. She understood instinctively that secrecy and protection were not the same thing. Over the next weeks, she documented everything, learning words she'd never needed before: provenance, authentication, preservation. When she finally reached out, she chose carefully. Historians who went silent when they entered the chamber, experts whose hands shook as they confirmed what they were seeing. Every verification tightened the truth around her like armor. With legitimacy came danger. Strange cars appeared on the road. One night, security cameras caught someone testing the locks. Then a man walked into her garage wearing a suit that cost more than her truck. He offered millions casually, spoke of convenience, escape, gratitude. Rebecca listened, then refused. She had spent her life being told to settle. This was not something she would surrender. When he warned her about lawyers and power, she met his gaze without flinching. She had survived worse than men who mistook money for entitlement. 2 days later, the story went public. Headlines exploded. Experts confirmed what Pine Ridge dismissed. The woman they mocked stood at the center of a discovery worth more than the town itself. The aftermath was relentless. Rebecca woke each morning to a life that no longer belonged solely to her. Reporters camped near the garage, their polished shoes standing awkwardly on oil-stained concrete as she changed brake pads like she always had. Legal documents stacked up beside grocery lists on her kitchen table. Historians spoke in hushed, reverent tones while she brewed coffee strong enough to keep her upright through nights of reading contracts she barely understood. She learned new language: provenance, preservation, fiduciary duty, while still packing Sophia's school lunches and reminding her to brush her teeth. Rebecca refused every offer to break the collection apart. She would not sell Marilyn piece by piece like spare parts stripped from a dead engine. Instead, she formed a foundation, ensuring the archive stayed whole, intact, respected. When the first exhibit opened, visitors walked through the cabin in silence, sensing something sacred beneath the stone and wood. Sophia watched from the corner, her small hand wrapped tightly around Rebecca's, pride glowing in her eyes. The same neighbors who once whispered now nodded too eagerly, their apologies arriving years too late. Rebecca accepted none of it. Vindication felt quieter than she imagined. Less triumph, more gravity. She hadn't risen above them. She had simply stopped carrying their judgment, and the weight of that release changed everything. Late one evening, long after the final visitors had left and the mountain returned to silence, Rebecca descended into the underground chamber alone. The preservation systems hummed steadily, a quiet heartbeat beneath the earth. She stood among the glass cases and journals, surrounded by a life the world thought it understood but never truly listened to. At the desk, she reread Marilyn's letter, the words written decades earlier to a stranger chosen not by name, but by circumstance and character. Rebecca finally understood the trust that had been placed in her hands. This wasn't about fame or fortune. It was about authorship. Marilyn had protected her own story when the world tried to consume her, flatten her, own her. Rebecca saw herself in those words more than she expected. She too had been seen but never known, judged but never understood. As she sealed the hidden stone panel once more, she did so gently, not to bury the truth again, but to honor the patience it had demanded. Above her, Pine Ridge glowed softly in the distance, no longer looming, no longer defining her. It was simply a town now, no louder than the past she had finally outgrown. Rebecca Torres never escaped her past, she integrated it. She kept fixing engines, kept grease under her nails, kept showing her daughter what resilience looked like when no one was clapping. The cabin didn't transform her life because it was worth millions. It transformed her life because it revealed a truth the town had never bothered to see. Judgment is often just ignorance wearing confidence. Some people are not broken. Some places are not cursed. They are simply misunderstood,